Committee. Can I remind people that this is not a public meeting, but a council meeting held in public, and only those registered to speak will be allowed to do so at the allotted time. Can I ask that everyone turn their phones to silent or switch them off, please? Especially a work phone, because if you put it on silent, it will still carry on ringing. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm goes, please make your way out of the exits, across the road to the memorial in front of the building. Members of the committee, have you all seen the additional information? I am Councillor Sandra Picking and I am the chair of this committee. To my left is Councillor Stuart Eptingstall, who is my deputy. To my further left is Alex Spur, who is our legal officer. To my right is Ruth Thacker, who is the deputy team leader. To my further right is Sarah. I've got yours on here, Sarah. What is that? Can I just say, if we have any members of declarations of interest? Samantha?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a councillor of Ward 18, so there is 2 applications, number 3 and number 4, I believe, will be my ward. But 2 days ago, there was a discussion in the Paris Council meeting, very briefly, and I'd like to declare that I will stay open mind, have no great recommendation at this stage. And also, I live in Ward 21, so that will be affecting the number 1 item, number 1. But again, I would like to vote because I have no great determination. I live about 5 away from this site. Thank you.
Can I ask then, Samantha, and anybody else? If you would, Councillor Wizard.
Yes, application number agenda item 5. It's in my ward, but I've had no communications with the applicant or anybody else to do with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Item 2 on today's agenda, Chair, I had a 2-way communication by email with the applicant, so I will be taking no part in that part of this meeting.
Can I just ask that you complete? Can I just ask that members complete the yellow form, declaring their interest, please, and hand it back over to the members. Agenda item 4 is apologies for absence. Danny?
I've got apologies from Councillor Ellis, Swift and Williams.
Thank you. Agenda item 5 is to approve the correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Planning and Highways Committee held on the 16th of December 2021, pages 1 to 5. Could I have them move, please? Seconded. In favour? Thank you.
Chair, would I want to come up after the minute?
No. We're asking to move the minutes of what was a record, if that is a record, and that's fine. Agenda item 6 is planning applications. Our first application is proposed change of use of land, and that is Renthorpe and our request, and Sarah will be the presenting officer.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 1 is application 1902 857 FUL, which is a full application for the proposed change of use of land, the station and caravans for residential purposes, with 2 gypsy pitches, with 2 separate dairy and utility buildings to be used as ancillary accommodations for that use, together with formation outstanding and associated landscaping works. The application is part retrospective. So I'll give you a presentation describing the site and proposals with a series of photographs and plans, and then a summary of the key planning issues. And so you've got a comprehensive report before you that sets out in detail all the relevant matters, and I don't intend to repeat those in full. So just on this slide that's up now, I'll just point out you have the application site in red here. So the opposite side of Lawrence Lane is Wakefield 41 employment zone here. This side of Lawns Lane is designated green belt. We have the M1 motorway here, which is approximately 120 metres away from the site at a slightly elevated level. And you'll note along Lawns Lane there is sporadic isolated residential development, some of which is set close to the motorway and the application site. Moving on to the photographs. Photograph 1 is the site is here. This is the new dairy building that has been erected. We've got the existing bungalow 53 Lawns Lane here in the foreground. You can see the boundary treatment to that. So the site is there, the employment zone on this side of the road. Slide 2 is when you've walked past the site, you can see the high hedgerow boundary that forms the site boundary with Lawns Lane, and you can just see the top of one of the caravans there. That's the static caravan. On photograph, you can just see it in the distance there beyond the dairy building that's been erected. This is the entrance to the site. The gates need consent, so that's vehicle access and pedestrian access at the side. Here's the hedgerow, that's the neighbouring bungalow bay. You can see the boundary treatment is similar in terms of scale to what they have there. When the gates are open, you see into the site, and this was an existing building on site which has been reclad, and that is also the dairy. You can see it's low level compared with the existing bungalows there, and you just see the top of the other dairy that's been built there. This is a photograph from within the site, but at the back of the site here, looking towards the motorway, you can just see the gantry for the motorway there. I say it's about 120 metres away, it's slightly elevated from where the application site is, Wakefield between it and the motorway. This is the new build area that backs onto Lawns Lane. You can see the large buildings associated with the employment zone in the background there, and just the edge of the static caravan. This is the back of the dairy, so it's offset from the hedgerow to the side boundary, so there shouldn't be any harm to the hedgerow from its presence, even prejudicing its growth. This area could be landscaped. This is a static caravan, which is the accommodations occupied by, they're described as family 1 in the committee report, so that's 1 adult with 6 dependent children. And they use the new build area that's been shown, that new build area has been constructed on site. Again, their caravan is offset from the hedgerow. You can see the height of the hedgerow there. This is the update room that was the existing building that had been on site. That's not yet completed. That is used by family 2, which comprises 1 single adult who reside in this touring caravan at the bottom corner of the site. And you can see the motorway in the distance there. So this is the site plan that we got. So Lawns Lane running along here. Got the high hedgerow there. New build area here that's been complete. Static pitch there. Got pitch 2, which is the temporary, not the temporary, the touring caravan occupied by the household family 2. That is their dairy, which is yet to be complete. And then we have 3 touring caravans which are used by the family in summer months when we go travelling around. We have a 2-metre stone wall to the boundary there, 1.8 timber post-border fence along the rear side boundary, and then timber boundary with the neighbour here. So that was the dairy prior to conversion. You can see a low-level simple building. As being converted, that's what it's like, so it's being reclad, and internally, obviously, we have a division going in there. So you have the utility part there, and the main dairy there, and members who were on site would have seen that this is part fixed out as kitchen, but work is still ongoing on this particular building. And then this is dairy 2, again, main dairy area, segregated utility, washing WC area again here. That has been complete, all this is fixed out, and members who did the site visits have the opportunity again to go inside that building as well. It's best just take it back to the site layout whilst I go through the details of the proposal for you. So the application was subject to normal publicity requirements, and given various revisions made to the proposal, this has taken place on 3 separate occasions. There have been 59 objections received in total, and it should be noted that some people have made multiple comments in relation to each set of plans, and thus the 59 objections are not necessarily from 59 different individuals. The points raised have been set out in detail in the report you have, but key themes raised are in relation to the site's location in the Greenbelt and policies concerning development in such areas, questions over the suitability of the road network to accommodate further vehicle movements, antisocial behaviour and the impact the site is having on the communities of existing residents. The site was formed in allotment. The applicants moved onto the site in 2019 and have occupied the site since then. One of the families comprises an adult and 6 dependent children. The other family comprises a single adult. The families travel during the summer months. As committee will be aware, applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Paragraph 4 of the NPPF sets out that the framework should be read in conjunction with the government's planning policy for travel sites, and thus the PPTS is a material planning consideration. That document states that the government's overarching aim is to ensure fair and equal treatment for travellers in the way that facilitates the traditional and nomadic way of life of travellers whilst respecting the interests of the settled community. At a local level, adopted core strategy policy CS7 provides a framework for positively determining planning applications for permanent gypsy and traveller accommodation. The proposal is considered to largely accord with the provisions of that policy for reasons set out in the report, but the development must also comply with National Greenbelt policy as well as other policies contained in the local plan. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the Greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Substantial weight is given to any harms of the Greenbelt, and very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harms of the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm is clearly outweighed by the considerations. The proposal is, by definition, inappropriate development in the Greenbelt as it does not comply with any of the exceptions as set out in the NPPF. It would reduce the openness of the Greenbelt and would not protect the countryside from encroachment. In accordance with the NPPF, substantial weight should be given to the harms of the Greenbelt. In terms of other harms, it is clear there has been intentional unauthorised development on the site. However, in this instance, it carries limited weight given the circumstances in which the applicant and their family have no alternative sites available to them within the district. Reference has been made to antisocial behaviour, and the report sets out that the police have raised concerns, citing the level of complaints received from the local community for calls for service on the neighbourhood policing team. The complaints vary in type, but include antisocial behaviour, crime-related, public safety, welfare and vehicular transport related. Their concern is that if this application is granted approval, then the rising trend of calls for service will continue, putting a further increased strain on the local policing team. However, it's important to state that most of the points raised should be dealt with under other legislation or procedures. The keeping of uncontrolled dangerous dogs is a criminal offence, so is riding quad bikes on the highway, and these are police matters, and the pressures on the police service from criminal activity is not a material planning consideration. The application is for a lawful use of the land to provide a settled base for its protected community. The site is of a small scale that would not dominate the existing settled community either physically or socially. It is not a foregone conclusion that the lawful use of the land as a gypsy and travel site would result in an increase in crime over and above any other form of lawful residential use on this site, or that the proposed occupiers would not be able to integrate into the nearby community. Matters of highway safety, land quality, visual impacts, impact on neighbouring community, noise and air quality are all expanded upon in full in the report you have in front of you, and no conflict is found with adopted planning policy. In terms of other considerations, there is an unmet need for sites in the district. The authority does not have a 5-year supply of gypsy and travel sites to meet its current needs. The Wakefield District Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Showperson Accommodation Assessment from 2018 provides the evidence about the gypsy and travel pitch requirements. The assessment establishes there is an outstanding need for 63 pitches for the 5-year period to 2023. For the period from 2023 to 2036, there is an identified need for an additional 52 pitches. These figures were revised upwards to 64 pitches and 116 pitches in total by 2036 at the public inquiry into the Castlegate site in August 2021. This means there are no alternative sites within the district for the applicants to move to should this application fail. The Council is in the process of identifying sites to meet the shortfall of the next plan period, although this is still being considered by the EIP Inspector. So at this time, it must be considered that the Council has not identified any sites to meet the shortfall in its current adopted plan. In this regard, the Council has not fully met its statutory duty to provide sites within its district. There is no doubt that this site would reduce the Council's site shortfall and would meet the needs of the proposed occupiers. When the Inspector considered the Castlegate site in the summer of 2021, he concluded on the matter of unmet need for travel accommodation that this should be given significant weight, and as members will recall, that site too was in the Greenbelt. The site is reasonably accessible to services, shops, schools and health facilities in the adjacent settlement of Stanley and Outwood. The site is already provided with adequate on-site services. Family A would benefit from having a stable location for their children, which would be in their best interest. Family B rely on the adult in Family A for an element of care. It's also important to consider the personal circumstances of the intended occupiers, their human rights and the public sector equality duty. Therefore, there are two competing considerations. On the one hand, there is the aim of preserving the Greenbelt for its own sake and the rights and interests of the wider public. On the other hand, there is the aim of respecting the gypsy and traveller way of life and ensuring that there are places where they may be able to pursue that lifestyle. This is a hard choice, either allowing inappropriate development in the Greenbelt or not resolving the immediate problems arising out of the fact that the Council has consistently failed to provide the necessary number of gypsy and travel sites and failed to have a sufficient 5-year supply of such sites in the future. Having carried out the detailed assessment as set out in the committee report, it is concluded that very special circumstances do not exist to clearly outweigh the harm to grant a permanent planning permission in this instance. However, because there is existing unmet need and no 5-year supply of specific deliverable sites, and because there would be a limited negative impact on the character and appearance of the area, it is considered that this is a significant material consideration in favour of granting temporary planning permission for a period of 5 years. This period of time will enable the Council to conclude the formal examination process for the emerging local plan. As some 70% of the district is covered by Greenbelt designation, it is likely that some new pitches will have to be located in the Greenbelt, and the merits of a permanent site at 55 Lawns Lane have been explored as part of that ongoing process. Whilst it is acknowledged that a temporary permission provides only short-term stability for the families forming part of the application, for those two families without an existing alternative, this will still bring immediate relief. A period of 5 years is considered appropriate as a time frame of anything less would make the scheme infeasible and not provide the stability which is required in the best interest of the child. It is for this reason that the recommendation of approval for a temporary period of 5 years and subject to conditions is set out at the end of the report that you have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have 2 speakers registered. Our first speaker is Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell, you've got 3 minutes now. Remind you when you get to 30 seconds to wind up. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm the Vice Chair of the Cargate Community Association and a 30-year resident of Cargate. I'm here to represent the association, which is a residents group that, without exception, objects to the approval of this retrospective application. The Planning Officer has highlighted the numerous reasons why the community rejects this proposal. This development has caused distress and divide among the small community, along with the serious and significant burden that is placed on the authorities, including the police, the fire brigade and departments within the council. On the advice of our lawyer, the association feels it is necessary to draw your attention to 2 serious points of consideration. Firstly, the personal circumstances statement details that 5 of the 6 children of 55 Lawns Lane have been educated in local schools. This is a material consideration and as such must be reliant on hard evidence. The association is in no way satisfied that the evidence has been provided to corroborate that the children attend school. The lack of evidence and commitment to formal education, as is claimed by the applicants, clearly undermines the notion that special circumstances are in play. Secondly, the fact that the council has knowingly failed in its duty to provide sufficient gypsy and traveller accommodation across the district is not a reason to approve the site. By its own admission, the council has consistently failed to provide the necessary number of gypsy and traveller sites and failed to have a 5-year supply. Under planning law, the council's inability to accommodate the applicant at an alternative site does not constitute very special circumstances, nor does the council's failings give any weight to this. In her report, the case officer actually states, having carried out the assessment, has concluded that very special circumstances do not exist to clearly outweigh harm to grant permanent planning permission in this instance. The site's now been occupied for over 3 years. The council's cite COVID as a reason for the delay, but the planning application was due to be decided before the pandemic. This period has not only allowed the occupants to settle legally, but has also led the council to earmark the site to be removed from Greenbelt and reallocated as a formal gypsy and travel site within its 2036 local plan. Under no circumstances is this a proper approach to planning and has been highlighted by our lawyer to the planning inspector as being woeful. Council has failed to control and act upon this development, leading to the council's unjust conclusion that this part of Cargate is suitable for a gypsy and traveller site. So we're appealing to the committee to reject the proposal on 4 counts. Firstly, it's an inappropriate development of Greenbelt, where special circumstances have not and cannot be fully evidenced. Secondly, under planning law, the council's unmet need and lack of a 5-year supply are not very special circumstances, nor does it carry any additional weighting in the planning argument. It should certainly not give the council the opportunity to take an opportunistic approach to planning, as appears to be the case. Thirdly, given the council's now declared intentions to reallocate the land as council gypsy the travel site in its 2036 plan, affording the applicant temporary permission in no way offers any balance to the settled community. And finally, approving the application was a flagrant disregard for planning law that's taken place over the last 4 years. The committee needs to give serious consideration to this undesirable precedent that it sets within the district.
Any questions for Mr McDonald? Councillor Scott?
Morning. Mr O'Donnell, if the planning application was for a bungalow and not for a gypsy traveller site, would the residents still complain about that?
I would imagine that if everything went through the proper planning permissions before anybody came and occupied the site, I imagine that the residents would not have raised any objections. The fact that everything appears to have been done before any approvals were granted appears to be the case. This was an allotment where the gentleman sold the property, and within a matter of days, wagons